Our last speaker for today, Hugh Campbell, co-founder and managing partner of GP Bullhound. Hugh has dedicated his career to advising and investing in Europe's most dynamic tech entrepreneurs, from Spotify to Slack, Unity to Avito. GP Bullhound has backed some of the world's most leading digital champions. Today, the firm manages £1 billion across 6 funds. What you may not know is that Hugh's passion for ultra running can be traced back to his early days as a member of the Hash House Harriers, a famous eccentric drinking club with a running problem. It's perhaps the only sporting society where finishing the trail earns you a beer instead of a medal. Beyond running, Hughes also chairs, connects AI, and serves on several boards, combining financial acumen with a passion for nurturing ideas that cross borders and industries. Ladies and gentlemen, lace up your shoes and please welcome Hugh Campbell.
Hi, everybody. So you have me as the last show, somewhere between the Prime Minister and cutting Hisham in half at the Magician Show later on this evening. I would like to tell you a story first, a story about me. This is the Botanical Gardens in Penang. And 33 years ago, I traveled across the bridge. I was doing a gap year between leaving school and studying at Oxford University, and I found myself in Penang. So alongside being chased by the monkeys in the Botanical Gardens, swimming on the beaches of Batu Ferringhi, and being flabbergasted by the Thai Pusam Festival, I worked for 6 months at a local school, teaching English, chemistry, and mathematics, although I have to say I was better at English than the other two. And it was during this period of time that I got to really experience the entrepreneurial and creative culture of the region and of Malaysians in particular. And that was a start for me of a professional journey in Asia. Since then, I've had a failed startup in Beijing in 1999. And I opened the office for GP Bullhound in 2015 and subsequently shut that office during COVID and when the political winds of change happened in 2021. But if I think about the Penang that I knew back then, it's very different from the Penang of today. Today, it is the center of a semiconductor high manufacturing cluster that I think most countries in the world would be proud of. There are 21 IC design teams in Penang now with foreign direct investment from the world's most valuable companies: NVIDIA, Tencent, ByteDance, Microsoft, the list goes on and on. And so Malaysia has already made a tremendous start at innovation. And I think a cautionary tale from Europe, of course, is that of the mobile telecom sector. So whilst the Penang cluster is now well established, and there are great signs in data centers in Johor, the journey is never finished. And the cautionary tale, of course, in Europe is that in the mobile telecom sector, where we had the world at our feet, with businesses like Ericsson, like Nokia, and Alcatel, we managed to screw it up. We dropped the baton, we lost focus, and with the advent of the iPhone, we were so arrogant that we didn't see the disaster that was to happen to us. And there you can see, of course, the successes of Nokia in the early days and the collapse of Nokia post-2008 when the Apple iPhone got going. And so it was into this sort of chaotic European environment post the dot-com boom that I launched GP Bullhound with two investment banking friends, a fellow Brit, Manish, and a Swede, Per. We were a bit like the three musketeers in European technology, with ambitions to build businesses on a truly global scale, high impact, high value, and trying to bring about positive change in the world. And so we started out three fresh-faced 26-year-olds into the chaos of the dot-com collapse. And we came up with an innovation framework, which I think is as applicable today as it was 25 years ago. And we call that the entrepreneur's clock. And as you can see, it's a journey with the entrepreneur represented by our beloved bullhound right in the middle. And what we've been doing for this period of time is building a set of financial services and products for technology founders, all the way from the very beginning until the end. And you'll see in the first quadrant, which we call the innovation quadrant, this is the quadrant where the investors are typically friends, families, and fools. This is the environment in which the greatest risk lies. And we don't advise businesses there, and we don't invest there. But we convene, we bring entrepreneurs together, and we bring investors together, and we try and give a helping hand to those founders. And as they mature, some of them will hopefully become a client of our investment banking business, and slowly but surely, over what the media would say is an overnight success, but for those entrepreneurs in the room, know it's a hard-fought journey of decades, they all sell their business. Maybe they sell it to Microsoft or Tencent, and at that point, the entrepreneur will become very wealthy. And most of them also become incredibly bored. They decide to move on and start a new business. And now in Europe, most of the companies that we back, the founders are second, third, or maybe even fourth-time entrepreneurs. And those entrepreneurs then invest in Bullhound Capital, which is our investment fund. And this entrepreneur's clock, this innovation cycle, we have stamped into different geographies of Europe, now also into the US. And it stood the test of time. We have now been operating through the networking era, the innovation around the desktop internet, the mobile phone, and of course more recently, cloud, SaaS, and inevitably AI. And we should make sure that as we think about innovation and risk, the impact of AI, which I think is our fourth industrial age, is going to be like no other. It's going to be a seismic change. It's going to allow companies to start and build businesses and generate revenue faster than ever before. OpenAI took only 2 years to get to $10 billion of revenue. It took Walmart 40 years to get to $1 billion of revenue. Just to put into context the speed of the cycle that we now are living in. It won't be long before we get a mythical unicorn from just a singular employee. It won't be long before software entrepreneurs may be a thing of the past. And so we've tested our framework throughout these difficult cycles, and it seems to work. We've been lucky enough now to advise or invest in $28 billion technology companies. Most, I'm proud to say, from Europe, for us as Europeans. Klarna, being the most recent IPO on NASDAQ, predated, of course, by Spotify and many others. Shazam, the music app, and for those fitness fanatics, maybe even the Whoop band. So as we think about the experiences that we've learnt in Europe, what can we say about the similarities with Southeast Asia? And I think there are quite a lot. We share a similar sized population, significantly greater than the United States. We have a richness in our cultures which allows for thousands of dialects, hundreds of languages perhaps, many countries. But of course that brings tremendous challenge for the entrepreneur. With burdensome regulation, different tax environments. I think still in Europe we must have 100 different ways of thinking about VAT. Lots of labor laws that reduce immigration, make things more difficult to hire and grow our companies. So I think the fact that Europe has been doing this maybe for 30 years longer in greater scale may lead to some learnings that we can share. But we also have some important differences which makes this region particularly attractive. In Europe, we're suffering from stubborn growth. I think this year in the UK we'll be lucky to get to 1%. This is nothing to shout about. In this part of the region, 4, 5, 6% is a lot more common and seems eminently sustainable. We're also in Europe suffering from an aging demographic. And here, of course, we have a much more youthful, digitally native and relatively large population from which creativity, mobility, and intelligence can deliver tremendous change. The successes in Europe are pretty well known. When we started out, it was a cottage industry. It was very difficult in Madrid to build a business that scaled into France or into Germany. It's become a lot easier. The European community has worked hard to reduce all manner of red tape and allowed entrepreneurs to flourish. And they're flourishing not just in London and Stockholm, which is where we started our business, but they're flourishing in all capital cities all across the continent. Whether it's Skype in Tallinn or Vinted, if you're into second-hand fashion, also in the Baltic states. Whether you're from Manchester, which is where I'm from, a business called Matillion, or Mistral if you're from France. All over Europe now, we're building businesses at a much faster clip. Today, there are 331 businesses worth over $1 billion, and the combined value is well over $1 trillion. Now, of course, that's a quarter of the market cap of Nvidia, but pretty good going for a community that didn't really start until 25 years ago. But it's not been an overnight success. It's required a coordinated action by the European community. I think one of the critical steps was the creation of the European Investment Fund, in effect a private capital sovereign wealth fund for Europe back in 1994. We continue with efforts like the Digital Markets Act to drive down red tape, improve the ability of entrepreneurs to expand across the region, and slowly but surely reducing the glue in the environment for entrepreneurs has led to great success. And so if we move to Southeast Asia now, what's been going on? And the reality is that a lot has been happening, not just in Penang and Johor, but all across the continent. Today, there are 38 companies worth over $1 billion. And if I cast my mind back to 2015, that was exactly where Europe was. Now, the market cap of those European businesses is double the 70 you see here today, closer to 140 billion. But the signs are very strong. It took Southeast Asia only 4 years to build $10 billion technology companies. It took the US 17 years to get to the same place. But these businesses aren't in all areas of technology. One big gap is in B2B software, but great success, naturally from a population of 700 million, this dynamic, youthful workforce that we've discussed is coming in payments, digital banking, and of course, in consumer technology, e-commerce and businesses like Grab. And in Malaysia, of course, great progress has also been made. This ambition for KL to become a top 20 startup destination is inspiring. The VC Golden Pass, which we're a beneficiary of, is encouraging international capital into the region. And of course, no day goes by when different non-government organizations are working hard to reduce the red tape. But it's not all roses. There are gaps in the environment here which need filling desperately. They come in 3 areas, and they're 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, and 3, I think this region does really well. So the gaps are in growth capital, they're in exits, and they're in experienced entrepreneurs that are familiar with scaling businesses, these recycling of entrepreneurs. And so if you think about growth capital, without a domestic growth capital industry, entrepreneurs are really going to struggle when they get through venture. Maybe they get to $10 million of revenue. And without growth capital, they have few choices. They can grow more slowly. It's a bit boring. They can raise money from banks. Really difficult. Or they can go bankrupt. Or sell too early. None of those are attractive. So domestic growth capital is critical. It's an area that in Europe we've benefited a bit from the US in the last 10 years or so. But I think it's critical to solve this at a domestic level. The second, of course, is exits. And Malaysia in this region is not alone. I mean, exits have been like a desert. It's only now with recent IPOs in the US that the Mag 7 and other large listed organizations are buying again. But as we come out of the desert towards the oasis, let's hope that in this region you build stronger relationships with the big buyer groups, whether that's the private equity firms on the one hand, or it's the large trade buyers in China, in Europe, and of course in the US. Now this connectivity, of course, is critical because point 6 is all about not just returning capital, but recycling knowledge. The longer the founders are in these businesses, the less opportunity they have to take the wealth that they will make and recycle it into the next startup or recycle it to the next generation of businesses. So these 3 points, I think, are learnings that we have worked hard at in Europe and I think still need work here today. Now, innovation is a light bulb moment. Entrepreneurs, I was told quite interestingly, work 24/7 to avoid the drudgery of working 9 to 5. And so it's really important that everybody in this community works together. Well, I think there's this phrase, isn't there, that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes an ecosystem to build a unicorn. It requires collaboration between the best universities, the largest corporates, the most ambitious governments and politicians to bring about significant change. Change that will allow these entrepreneurs, who ultimately are the star of the show, to be more successful on a global stage. And of course, innovation brings with it failure. You can't have innovation without an acceptance of risk. And risk is something in Europe we've struggled a lot with. I mean, certainly in the UK, 10 or 20 years ago, if you had a startup and failed, not only would your wife divorce you, but you wouldn't be allowed to play in the golf club again. So there is a realization that innovation and risk are the same, and you can't have one without the other. Now, the prize here for success in this region, I think, is huge. For those that are studiers of the European success stories, there is no greater success than Sweden. And Per, my Viking colleague, would be delighted to hear me saying this, because, of course, as a Brit, we battle about this from time to time. I love to say that UK is the most successful creator of unicorns because, in truth, we have built the most. But Per will say, because he only has a population of 10 million people, that they have created more unicorns per capita than we have in the UK. And so, with 10 million people, a sense of neutrality, which I think you share in Malaysia, there is a tremendous prize ahead for the Malaysia, I think, that can become maybe the Sweden of Southeast Asia. And we've been working hard here in Malaysia to initiate this dialogue, to build a European corridor between Southeast Asia and Europe. A number of our companies have already set up here. Connects and conversational AI business, Eco, Vardis in sustainability software. And for those paddle players amongst you, you should be booking your paddle courts on Playtomic. Now, building a successful and innovative society requires courage, and it requires patience. I firmly believe that Malaysia has all of the ingredients for success, and I hope I get to be part of it. Thank you very much.
A big round of applause for all our 4 speakers. Together, your stories remind us that risk is not something to fear, but something to harness. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope we leave this session not just informed, but inspired to innovate without borders. Thank you.